Redline logbook here for Don Machi, Hestia Familia Part 12. Where we left off, the Hestia Familia just failed their first expedition and are resting on the 18th floor before returning to the surface. After everything the Hestia Familia has done in less than a year, they're actually quite big in Aurora at this point. Combined with the fact that Bell was the one who killed the Black Goliath, pretty much they have the run of the place when it comes to Reveria. They're well liked and respected by the people there, and it's normal for them to be invited to a party while they're there. While they're stuck in Reveria for a couple of days, they decide to check into a really cheap hotel that's there. The reason why the hotel is so cheap is because a member of the Ganesha Familia was murdered in it. Now the poor bastard who runs it can't get any customers. He even gives them complimentary dungeon fruit just for staying because he was so happy about it. Basically everybody wants to spend time with Bell and do things with Bell, so he has a busy day. At a certain point he even visits Lewis and Dormal when they're parties because they're in the medical wing of Reveria. He tries to apologize about how they couldn't save his arm, but Lewis feels grateful towards Bell and his familia for getting him out of there alive. Dormal agrees, and they both basically swear that if anything ever happens to the Hestia Familia and they need an ally, Bell doesn't have to hesitate to ask. They will come running. A day passes, everyone goes to sleep, and while Cassandra dreams, she has one of her visions, the Banquet of Tragedy. In this vision, everyone dies, except for Bell. He seems to be the only one who survives in this vision. And Cassandra understands that this vision is the worst one she's ever experienced. And that is when she is informed that there has been a murder in Reveria. A werewolf man tells everyone in Reveria that Gale Wynn murdered his friend. He takes the residents of Reveria to the crime scene where they find a body that had its tendons and arms and legs slit so he couldn't escape, brutally tortured, and finally stabbed through the heart. This man claims that his friend was killed by Gale Wynn herself, and that he saw her do it. Of course, Bell rejects this outright, in front of everyone, because he knows Ryu, and he believes she would never do something like this. And this actually starts to get people to turn on Bell at Reveria, because once again, Gale Wynn is not everyone's ally. Gale Wynn is a wanted criminal who ran around slaughtering people that had any connection to Evilists. That includes people who were members of the guild, merchants, and just random civilians. Obviously, these people all had connection to Evilists, because otherwise Ryu wouldn't have killed them, but obviously most people don't know that they were connected to Evilists. They just know that Ryu went on a slaughter fest. Sensing the mood, Lily obviously pulls Bell away and stops him from going any further. Ryu, being a famous adventurer from the Dark Age and a masked killer, pretty much everyone decides they don't want nothing to do with this. That is, until it is brought up that there's a massive bounty on her head. That's when every adventurer in Rorio decides, we have to avenge our comrade. So they all basically decide to join forces into a giant army of Reveria to hunt down Ryu. And apparently Ryu is seen going down to the lower floors. So the Hestia Alliance then has a meeting discussing what they should do next. Bell is trying to convince everyone that Ryu would never do this and that he wants to save her. And after discussing it for a little bit, they all come to the conclusion that there's a possibility that Ryu is being framed. And they all agree to go on this journey with the rest of the hunters to save Ryu from them. The only one who is not on board is Cassandra. Because of her vision, one of the lines is, a fairy shall lead a white flame to disaster. A fairy being Ryu, because that's what elves are called in the Danmachi universe, and Bell is usually referred to as a white flame, which is basically saying a pure adventurer who wants to be a hero and not just does it out of revenge or hatred. But as always, she's ignored and they press on forward. And so she comes to the conclusion that she has to figure out what her dreams are saying and prevent the worst. It's up to her to save everyone. Lily, of course, is not stupid. She understands that this is kind of over their heads, and so she sends a letter back to the surface to go straight to Hestia. While still in the middle floors in the tree labyrinth, Bell kind of shows that he's the strongest out of everyone there, and so that's when Boris decides to use him to get rich quick. Basically, he wants to use Bell as his #1 guy, so this way Bell can defeat Ryu and then he can collect the money. Which is selfish of him, but it works out great for the Hestia Familia because that means Bell will be right there when they find Ryu. Right before they go into the deep floors, the hunting party decides to take a rest. This gave Cassandra time to think about her prophecy. It was obvious that the word mother represented the dungeon, and so if the calamity came from mother, she assumed it must have been the floor boss. So she then asked Lily when is the next time it's spawned. Lily explains to her it spawned 2 weeks ago, it was killed, so it won't be spawned for another 2 weeks, so they're fine. And Aisha points out that even if it did get spawned, it wouldn't matter because they have so many high-level adventurers, they'd easily be able to kill it. So woolly mammoths then decide to attack the party as a herd. Boars, Bell, and the others decide to go stop the monsters. Welf is about to go join them when Cassandra stops him. She realizes the white flame must be Bell. but her prophecy doesn't say that he dies. But it does say he will be pulled into catastrophe by the fairy, which makes her realize that even though Belle isn't destined to die, he might still need her help. And so she begs Welf to take a piece of the Black Goliath cloth and turn it into something that Belle can use to protect himself. Welf straight up says he's against this completely, that the stuff he makes for Belle, it should be made by his hand. It shouldn't be a piece of some monster that he just modified. She continues to beg him and says that when it comes to helping people, Belle will always put his life on the line. He'll just keep putting himself in more and more danger. I just want him to be safe. And Welf, showing character growth, says, yes, I agree. Belle will do that, and I will no longer put my pride above my friends. In the time it takes Belle to finish off the mammoth, Whale decides to take a section of the Goliath skin and turns it into a scarf for Belle. Unfortunately, as soon as they're done killing off the mammoths, they then start to hear explosions, and they go rushing towards them. They finally get into the lower floors, floor 25, but they can still hear the explosions going off, and they realize it's happening all the way on floor 27. Boar's all excited, he's finally going to get his payday. He orders that they're going to split into two groups. Group 1 will actually separate into even smaller groups that will go after Ryu. Obviously, he made sure Belle was in his group. And Group 2 will stay behind and guard the exit, so this way she can't escape the lower floors. The entire Hestia Familia is ready to go in Group 1, but Cassandra, knowing how her prophecy goes, knows the real danger will come in floor 27, not floor 25. And so, her goal is to make sure that only Belle goes down there. She speaks up and says that wouldn't it be best that most of us stay behind because the passages are narrow and we need to move fast. We're going to save Ryu. Because of her personality, she then immediately thinks she failed, but Daphne agrees with her, saying that it should be an elite strike force that would go. Lily also seconds this and decides that the ones who should go are Belle and Aisha. Thing is, once again, Aisha dies in her vision, so she has to prevent that from happening. So Cassandra then throws Haruhime under the bus. She says that Aisha should stay behind to protect her because last time, when they were running away from the Moss Huge, Cassandra had to be the one to carry her, and she can't do that again because Haruhime is so heavy. As you can imagine, Haruhime doesn't like being called fat because no woman likes being called fat. Oka then points out that she has definitely gotten bigger since they were in the Far East, and Welf seconds that, but they were talking about something completely different. They were not calling her fat. Doesn't matter, this breaks Haruhime's heart even more because she assumes they're calling her fat. Aisha then points out that she can't always be there to protect Haruhime, so this is a pointless thing even to bring up. Cassandra should just work out more. But that's when Belle pipes up and asks Aisha to stay. He says he agrees with Cassandra, which once again breaks Haruhime's heart because she assumes he's saying she's fat. That's not what he meant. What he's now saying is that he wants Aisha there, who is a level 4, to protect all of them while he's gone. Belle wants to be able to focus on Ryu, and he can't do that if he's worried about his other friends, and so that's why he's relying on Aisha. She understands and accepts that that's her role now, is to protect everyone. Haruhime still is confused and assumes that all 3 of the men in the party called her fat. Aisha, of course, goes along with Belle's decision, but warns him when he does find Ryu, he's not going to be able to handle the situation. Belle then declares that he's going to put his faith in Ryu. Before he leaves, Welf hands Belle the scarf he made, and Belle even questioned if this is alright, because Belle knows Welf only wants to give Belle things that he made himself, not just some random drop item. But Welf says it's fine, and besides, he couldn't turn down Cassandra, who basically begged him. Belle then thanks Cassandra for worrying about him, and she wishes him a safe journey. And so, the hunting party heads to floor 27. While in the 27th floor, they are constantly attacked by more powerful monsters as normal, and Belle actually figures out just how to use the scarf that was given to him by Welf. He just uses it as a whip. Because it's soft, it of course is able to flow easily, but at the same time, because it's the skin of the Black Goliath, it's very hard and durable. It's like a hybrid of a whip and a hammer. And once again, Boris recognizes just how strong Belle is, and decides to use him to make as much money as possible. Belle also gets to interact with Boris's closest allies in Reveria. None of these people are part of the same familia, they're all separate, but they all basically live in Reveria. They're basically the business owners within Reveria. They were also there when they fought the Black Goliath with Belle, and they're actually really happy he's here with them to take on Gale Wind. While searching for Ryu, they come across a giant hole in the wall, perfectly round and carved out. And this perfectly carved out hole hadn't been healing by the dungeon yet, which means whatever made it is close by. And normally, if you see an irregular, the idea is to run away. In fact, Boris even says that. But once again, Ryu has a massive bounty on her head. He wants the money. So instead of evacuating the 27th floor, they decide to press forward. That's when Belle hears a song. Back on the 25th floor, the rest of the group are watching Turk, the werewolf guy, whose friend was killed by Galewind. Aisha becomes impatient, decides she's just going to beat the information out of him, but obviously that's a terrible idea, because that would turn everyone against their group. So Aisha comes up with plan B. She's just going to screw the guy, and then while he's in pleasure, she'll ask him questions. That plan is also rejected by everyone. Fortunately, or unfortunately for them, Turk realizes that he's being watched, and he basically causes a scene. He declares he doesn't want to wait to get revenge for his friend, and he's actually going to go after Galewind himself. He tries to convince everyone to come with him, but they say no, that's stupid, they're not strong enough to take on Galewind, we'll stay here. So him and his two flunkies decide to go off on their own, and obviously the Hestia group falls behind. The singing Belle heard was obviously Maria, and when he gets to her, he's very concerned because obviously she shouldn't be singing while there are other adventures around. But the reason why she did that is because she was calling Belle because she's scared. There's something there, something that she's never seen before, something that scares her lurking in this 27th floor. Belle, of course, puts two and two together and realizes whatever she's scared of made that hole from before. He then asked Maria if she knows anything about Ryu and where she's at, and after a good explanation, she's then able to figure out what Belle's talking about, and she leads him to Ryu. Ryu is standing over a dwarf man with severe burns all over his body, covered in blood, and his tendons slit. Ryu's first reaction to seeing Belle is, "Why are you here?" out of fear and shame. When Belle tries to get answers about what's going on, she completely rejects him and just runs away. When Belle gets back to Boris's group, they're currently rounding up a group of men that have also been brutally beaten and tortured. Amongst the corpses, there is one man still alive, a cat man whose ear and arm are both cut off. He starts freaking out, saying that the Galewind did this to him, and that he doesn't want to die. The Amazon of the party tries to give him medical aid, but he swipes her hand away, screaming more frantically, saying, "Don't touch me, don't touch me." That's when Boris recognized him, Jura, a wanted man that was a member of Evilis. He's also part of the Familia that wiped out Ryu's Familia. So everyone comes to the conclusion that obviously Galewind was on this bloody crusade to get revenge. He, of course, then begs for help from Galewind, saying that he's a good guy now, he's on the straight and narrow, he hasn't caused any trouble in years. He was just in hiding all this time till Galewind found him. He doesn't want anything to do with this. Boris doesn't care. He just realizes now he has two bounties he can hand into the guild, so he's actually quite happy about this. Belle then bumps into a round thing on the ground, picks it up, and then realizes what it is. Before he can say anything, Ryu then charges in, wipes out all the adventurers, doesn't kill them, of course, and immediately goes for Jura. Jura freaks the fuck out and runs away at full speed. Belle, of course, runs after Ryu. Now that the three of them are alone together, Belle can ask Ryu, were you the one who did this? Were you the one that cut off his ear? Were you the one that cut off his arm? Were you the one who did this to him? And Ryu's response is yeah. And she even tells Belle he needs to go away because she can't kill someone in front of him. She then turns her attention to Jarul and tells him that her greatest regret, her only regret, is that she didn't kill him. She assumed he died 5 years ago and she should have checked his corpse to make sure he really was dead. But now she's going to correct that mistake. Jarul, of course, is begging for Belle to save him and to protect him from Ryu, but of course, Belle still has his doubts, and so he doesn't stop. He continues to question if Ryu was the one who murdered the man on Reveria. And after constantly begging and asking her to answer the question, she finally does and says no, she did not do it. And Belle chooses to believe her. Partially it's because he wants to trust Ryu, but also Belle isn't stupid. He picks up the item that he found earlier, and it's a blaze stone. It's a drop item from a monster that explodes when you heat it up. And so Belle deduces that the explosions from earlier wasn't from Ryu's magic, but from these stones he had. Not just that, but Belle's a level 4 senses, which means he can smell blood. And the blood he smells is only on the cuts that are on Jarul's face, not on his ear and arm. Which means when Ryu cut off his ear and arm, that happened years ago when she was going on her rampage. And those cuts on his face are most likely something that he did to himself. Jira realizes he's screwed and decides just to reveal that he's still a bastard. Belle then apologizes to Ryu for doubting her, and Ryu apologizes back for letting her emotions control her and not explaining the situation. And the two decide to take down Jira together. Unfortunately, Jira is a monster tamer. He then pulls out his whip, cracks it, and out comes a giant snake called a Lampin, a predatory monster with the power of a level 4 from the deep floors. Its body is so strong it actually can smash through the dungeon walls that dig through different levels of the dungeon. At the exact same time that Belle and Ryu are now having to fight a Lambton, the rest of Belle's group also are stuck doing the exact same thing, because that werewolf and his team finally reveal that they're actually the bad guys, and they also summon a Lambton. Now, none of these guys are tamers. The only reason why they can control the Lambton is because of a magic item that's like a collar around the monster's throat, combined with a whip that is also a magic item. These two working together, allowing an individual who has no taming ability to control powerful monsters, created by Evilists themselves. Because Jura had complete control over the Lambton, he was guiding it in ways that it normally wouldn't fight, and so it was actually quite difficult, even though Ryu has fought many Lambtons before. So she decides to have Belle keep it busy while she charges up her magic. Jira realizes what's happening, orders the Lambton to go after her, but once again Belle does his job, keeps it busy long enough for her to unleash her magic, knocking the creature unconscious. As for the Lambton that Belle's party was fighting, they decide to go into a room with no exit, so this way the Lambton had only one choice to attack from the front. Haruhime then used her level boost on Welf and Oka, so this way they could play as the vanguard, taking hit after hit from the Lambton, while Chikasa, the archer, is able to shoot out its sensory organs in its head. These organs needed to be taken out because they're extremely sensitive to magic, so once the creature was blind, that's when Aisha was then able to use her magic to cut its head clean off, killing it. They're all super happy and excited at the fact that they just defeated a deep floor monster, except for Cassandra, who realizes that this monster wasn't the despair. It wasn't the great tragedy that's about to occur. And so she is now more scared than ever, because whatever this is that's coming, it's worse than a monster from the deep floors. Jiro then starts to laugh, because this whole time, he was just a distraction for Ryu. He wasn't the one who was going to do it. Instead, it was the werewolf and his idiot friends setting all of the explosions all over floors 25 to 27. Jiro explains that ever since that day he's been researching how to resummon the monster. Rule 1, you must cause complete calamity to the entire floor that you're on. Every inch of it must be destroyed in some way. 2, you cannot do it in the upper floors because of Uranus' prayer. And 3, the dungeon recognizes floors 25 through 27 as one area. So if you wish to summon the monster here, you have to destroy all 3 floors at once. And so the fools that are following Jira light the explosion and annihilate all 3 floors at once. Ryu then realizes what he's done and goes insane. Starts to strangle him, attack him, even tries to stab him through the heart, but Belle stops her. Then an eerie sound is made throughout the entire area. Ryu then falls to her knees, scared out of her mind, unable to even breathe properly. Jiro also starts to tremble in fear, basically holding his body as he shakes. Ryu's last act of desperation is to beg Belle to run away, to escape. If anyone needs to survive, it's him. That's the most important thing to her right now, but it's too late. The Juggernaut is born. Belle asks what's going on, and Jiro explains that this is something that happened 5 years ago. That his familia was the enemy of Ryu's familia, and they were planning to kill all of them. They set a trap in the dungeon with as many blaze rocks as they could to blow up the Estrella Familia, but it failed. Every member of the Estrella Familia survived the explosion. But in the end, this caused so much destruction to the dungeon that it couldn't handle the pain, and so it summoned basically its antibody. So Belle then questions, why would you summon this horrific monster again? And Jira's response is, so I can tame it. Jira is completely terrified. In fact, this thing basically made him lose his mind. That's how fearful he is of it. But at the same time, he's in awe of its strength, and he wishes to have that strength for himself. Because the thing that he fears even more than the Juggernaut is Ryu, and he believes he can overcome his fear of Ryu if he has the Juggernaut on his side. The Hestia group can hear the screams of Avengers dying, and so of course they're concerned about Belle, and they're going to head down there to the 27th floor, but Cassandra stops them. Cassandra then starts pleading for forgiveness for all the Avengers that are dying, because the people who were supposed to die, in her vision, was all of her friends. But because she saved all of her friends, other people died in their place. Belle can also hear the screams of Avengers dying. He starts to go to help, but Ryu stops him, because she knows what's going to happen. They're all dead anyway, and so will he be if he tries to get involved. Jiro then starts to mock her, saying that of course she wouldn't want Belle to go, and she's willing to sacrifice all their lives. She did the exact same thing to her familia. In fact, she even murdered her own captain. Ryu, not wanting Belle to hear this, starts to screaming shut up over and over again. That's when Boris and his party rush in from one of the tunnels, with the Juggernaut behind it slaughtering everyone it can. Once they're inside the room, They all then try to attempt fighting back against it, but it doesn't work. It slaughters them. The Juggernaut is basically a giant dinosaur fossil. Its claws are so sharp that no weapon or shield can block it. Its teeth can crush anything, and its tail is basically a hammer that can crush anything. But what makes the Juggernaut truly terrifying is speed. Nothing that large to be able to move that fast. It's currently faster than a level 4 Bell. As such, all the level 2s it's currently slaughtering can't even see the attacks coming. They die without even knowing why. Seeing everyone getting slaughtered, Bell decides to charge in with a greatsword. But every attack, it just gets dodged over and over again. Because once again, this thing is so fast that even Bell can't keep up with it. Rhea is too scared to act, and so all she can do is just beg Bell to run away. But he's refusing to because he has to protect everyone. That's who Bell is. The Juggernaut then shatters Bell's greatsword, and so then he tries a firebolt on it. But as soon as he casts it, he immediately flies back in an explosion. The Juggernaut is revealed to have the ability to reflect all magic back at its caster. Realizing he's in trouble, Bell then pulls out the Hestia knife, but that's when the Juggernaut lunges, cuts off his arm. Completely stunned by what just happened, he can't even get out of the way when the Juggernaut uses its tail to smash him right in the neck. This actually breaks Bell's neck, but he survives because of the Goliath scarf he's wearing. But he's basically on the verge of death at this point. Now that it perceives Bell as being dead, the Juggernaut goes off to kill Borz's group. As for Yu, she's finally able to move. The shock of seeing Bell possibly die breaks her fear and she runs towards him. She checks if his pulse is there. It is. And she starts to administer healing magic on his neck. After doing that, she then engages with the Juggernaut. And she quickly realizes that she cannot win. It's just too strong. It's too fast. There's nothing she can do to beat it. Borz and the remaining other adventurers don't realize that it can reflect magic, and so they decide to blast it with everything they have at this point. And as soon as they do that, they all get completely incinerated and blasted to pieces by their own magic. Borz survives because he's a level 3, and so a level 2's magic can't kill him, but he still takes some damage. The Juggernaut then attacks him, and of course Ryu once again saves his life, orders him to run away, takes him a minute to get himself together, but after she yells at him again, he finally stands up and runs away. Unfortunately for Ryu, the Juggernaut then just continues to beat her down, landing a pretty serious blow where it shatters her leg with its tail, leaving her completely defenseless and just waiting to die at that point. While all this is going on, Marie, the mermaid, drags Bell into the water so she can heal him. Now, in the anime, they show her using the Hestia knife to cut up her body, except only an individual with Hestia's blessing can use the Hestia knife, otherwise it's completely dull. In the light novel, she actually uses his unicorn blade that he just got from Welf. She uses that to cut up her own body, cause her to bleed, so this way her blood can then heal him. And it doesn't just heal his broken neck, she's actually able to reattach his severed arm with her blood. So now Bell is at complete full health, 100%, even his stamina is up and ready. He then swims back to the surface. He then gets back up right before Ryu is killed by the Juggernaut, and basically challenges it to a rematch. This is actually where we get the first inner thoughts of the Juggernaut, and we find out that it does not like the fact that there's prey that he killed that came back. That goes against its very philosophy, and so now it is very motivated to kill Bell. Bell then wraps the Goliath scarf around his arm because he realized it and the Hestia knife are the only thing it can't cut or break through, and so he's using it as a shield. Bell is able to get underneath it and stab it dead center in the chest where its magic stone should be, but it has no magic stone. The Juggernaut isn't meant to live for very long, so it doesn't need a magic stone. Its body is just made from the amount of magic that the dungeon thinks is necessary for it to wipe out all life. Because of that, Bell decides that the only way he can fight this thing is in close quarters combat, so he can't use its speed. And so the two of them just share blow after blow, where they're basically just standing in the middle of the ring swinging at each other, where Bell is blocking every single one of its attacks with his Goliath arm, and even though the Goliath is able to block the blades, the strength of the attacks is still shattering his bones underneath, so his arm is turning to mush, while the Juggernaut, also lacking in armor, is slowly getting cut to pieces by the Hestia knife. The Juggernaut is also feeling anger and frustration at the fact that it can't cut through the Goliath cloth. The idea that there's something that it can't cut through with its invincible claws brings a sense of shame to this monster. And so this basically becomes a battle of attrition, where one of them has to give out eventually. Bell, fearing that he's going to lose this battle of attrition, decides to use his ultimate move, and he uses the Juggernaut's own power against it. Bell fires a firebolt at the Juggernaut, causing it to reflect the attack into the Hestia blade, creating his Argo Vesta attack, and then Bell charges forward. The Juggernaut then thinks to itself, what do I do? Do I reflect it with my shield, because it's magic, or do I block it with my claws, because it's a physical attack, because it's a knife? It then comes to the decision to run away. Bell once more uses his Goliath scarf as a whip, wraps it around the Juggernaut's tail, and then uses it to jump towards it. Bell hits it with the Argo Vesta, and when the dust settles, the Juggernaut is still alive. Its shield has been shattered, so it can't reflect magic anymore, and it's missing an arm. But other than that, it's still able to keep going. Bell, on the other hand, falls to his knees, basically completely drained at this point. He's hit his limit first. But before even the Juggernaut can get back up, Jura takes advantage of the situation and attaches his magical collar to it. Seeing that he'd won, he basically starts to mock Bell and Ryu, and then orders the Juggernaut to kill them. This does not work at all, because the Juggernaut cannot be controlled, and casually just slaughters Jura. Unfortunately, the Lambton is still alive. It heard Jura's order to kill them, it gets itself back up, and goes after Ryu. Bell goes in to protect her, and the thing basically swallows both of them alive, and starts to dig deep into the ground. The Juggernaut hates Bell now. It wants to kill him more than anything else, and so it ignores its prime directive to wipe out all life in the area, and decides to follow Bell down the hole. That's when the Mother Dungeon starts to freak out that its ultimate predator just left without finishing the job. Angered and frustrated by this, the dungeon then decides it's going to forcibly spawn the Monster Rex, the floor boss, to finish the job. And unfortunately for the Hestia group, they are that job. And so now, they're forced to fight the Ansevina. As for Bell and Ryu, the Lambton eventually comes to a stop and dies. And as it dies, Bell is then able to cut their way out. When he looks around, he realizes he can't see anything. It's so dark, even his level 4 vision won't allow him to see. He then examines the ground and the walls, and he realizes they're milky white, which means him and Ryu are trapped in the White Palace. They're in the deep floors. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give a thumbs up so you enjoy more DanMachi and other things. Thank you, and have a great day.